Right, we are live, and I think once a month I have an interesting guest speaker. And today we have Laura Patterson, and we met, and she corrected me. We met about 2 years ago and had some conversation and exchanges. But we recently had a conversation that really sparked my interest, and I wanted to bump her above some of the other speakers because she's what I call fact based in how her growth strategies work, and she's extremely confident. I like that, and I like the clarity that she brings. Without further ado, I'll introduce you to Laura right here, and I'll go ahead and shut this down so you can see her.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm sitting in scorching, blazing hot Austin, Texas. So I hope some of you are in much cooler places, which is where I would like to be.
Atlanta has hot spots, but it's not as hot as Texas, and it's a great place for the tech industry as well. I
Yes.
remember flying over when I had an IT company. I had something called ISO Interactive,
Yeah.
and they had a lot of tech and gaming conventions over there. There, and it bounced between there and San Diego, I think. Yeah. So my AC is blowing, but it's not really that great right now. I think around 3 o'clock it gets worse. So we have 1 hour before it gets warmer, right? Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining. And if you see the repeat, feel free to go ahead and engage in the chat as well. So this will be a replay. And if anyone wants to post where they're from, feel free. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm moving to California in 2 weeks. So I have a gap in there, and I'm looking forward to being in California, but not the move part. You know, it's like a 4 or 5 day thing there. Have you been in Austin, Texas for a while?
I have been here a little over 40 years.
Oh my
I,
goodness, a
I
native.
came I came
Well,
here for one of those tech companies. It was a little small company here in Austin, Texas called Motorola. And I joined one of their startup organizations, and I was there for 14 years. And I came by way of Florida, where I worked for a startup in the technology world. This is really going to date me for those of you out there. I worked for a startup company that had a application that ran on a Wang 2200. If we know what Wang 2200 or Wang is, put that in the chat so I can wave to you. And I originally hail from the Midwest. So I'm a Midwesterner, and my approach is very Midwest style. I have not changed that even in all this time. So that's a
well,
little
tell me
bit.
what is the Wang system? I want to know what this is now.
What is?
The Wang. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So Wang was a very big company way back when.
Okay.
Computing company in the days that when I guess when Cray and Digital were all big names. Wayne was a big name. They had a huge building. Their headquarters was up in Boston, I believe. And anyway, um, they are no more. So,
Oh,
yeah.
funny story. When I got into tech, I was in high school, and I'm 51 today. It's my birthday today, by the way.
Happy birthday, Troy.
Yeah, and so I'm 51. It's also my daughter's birthday. She's the same day, so I really don't get a birthday, and we'll celebrate when we get to California. But when I was in high school, they had something called Votech. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They split your high school into a trade school, and so after 10th grade or something like that, you can go to a trade school for 2 years, right? And so they split your day, and I went into drafting, and that's when they first started the CAD, the computer aided design stuff. And I ended up getting a job, and the system they had was a DOS, and I don't know if that's newer than Wang, but DOS was like they had no screen, and everything was, and it had a computer like a beefed up 286, and we did whole architecture, right, for naval ships.
Wow.
And we used to have this. The keyboard was huge. Just like I have this keyboard here, right? imagine a keyboard literally twice as large, and then we used to punch in the keys to do the function to move the items over based on what the specs were. And we could punch a bunch of numbers and we could go to lunch and then we would come back. It would
That's
still
right.
be moving around stuff.
Yeah, the world has changed. Just think about how much computing power we have in our hands when we hold a smartphone, right?
Oh my
So yeah,
goodness.
the
Yeah.
world has changed a lot in just our time, and it's rapidly changing. I mean, we're way ahead with, we're in the world of AI and cloud computing and all of that. And just imagine what that must be like to people who, from way back when, decades ago. But let's talk about what people came to talk about.
Yeah,
Performance
yeah. And
excellence.
I have a bunch of slides here, and I'll just show this. But Lisa, my assistant, if you can, feel free to post the link to this so they have the slides, and then we'll also later on anyone who has joined, we'll send them a DM or a LinkedIn email or something that has that link in there. But today we're talking about becoming a high performance organization to kind of accelerate growth. That's a big thing right now. How do we accelerate? Because there's everyone's moving in one direction or other or multiple directions, and they're not really in sync, and they don't have specificity. And so once you don't have those dominoes in a row, it's very difficult. So this is kind of what we're talking about today. Laura, before we do that, I want to know a little more about you, and tell me about your experience in your company. And that way we can kind of start it off that way, and they can get a consensus of like, okay, this is the person I'm talking to and this is why we're here.
Sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So, Vision Edge Marketing was founded in 1999, and we're a growth strategy firm. And what we really specialize in is helping our customers use insights derived from data, performance management capabilities, and exceptional operational excellence to grow and create a competitive edge and deliver superior customer value. So that's really what we try to help our customers do.
Well, that's a
And
lot.
it is a lot,
That's
but
a
they're
lot.
very interrelated. So that's what's really important to understand is that they're kind of interrelated. And you said something really important, Troy, and I don't want us to gloss over it. You talked about the challenges many organizations have because people sometimes aren't moving in the same direction. And so high performing organizations are highly aligned. There's a lot of internal alignment, but the
Mm-hmm.
alignment isn't just to the inside. The alignment is to what's happening externally too. And that includes, making sure their suppliers are aligned, their partners are aligned, and aligned to what the customer's needs are because they're very customer centric. So alignment is a critical attribute of a high performing organization that achieves performance excellence. You really can't get performance excellence if you're not aligned, because without alignment, you can't mobilize your organization. And high performing organizations, are very operationally oriented. That is, they have a lot of processes and systems and infrastructure to help
Mm-hmm.
them be successful. And so if you aren't mobilized and don't have the infrastructure, it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, because you're kind of reinventing the wheel every time you have to do a process versus a baked in process where, oh, yeah, step one, two, three, boom, we're done. And they've done it many times. I would imagine so the size of organizations that you help, tell us about that, because I tend to help solopreneurs, up to companies of like 50 employees. So that's kind of my sweet spot. So if you are like a high performance coach and you're pulling in $250,000 or something like that, or you're a company like an IT company that has under like 50 employees or making around the 5 million mark, to me that's a sweet spot because it's a lot less red tape and there's a lot of improvement that can be done almost immediately. So where do you specialize in as far as the team sizes?
That's a great question. And we've worked with over 250 companies, and they run the gamut, that there are some things in common. So we work with companies that are startup and early stage, all the way up to very well-established companies that have been around for decades. some a century. So all over the world. But I would say that we're predominantly a B2B organization. So most of our customers, I say 98% of them are in the B2B space. Even in our one of our primary markets is financial services have a very strong B2B component. So we work in 5 primary industries: financial services, as I mentioned, and what we call manufacturing. So what traditional manufacturing, transportation and logistics, high tech, and that's everything in high tech. We've been in cybersecurity since 2001, networking, computing, semiconductors, which is, as I mentioned, one of my personal roots, software as a service. So whatever you would call technology.
Yeah.
And then what we would say is life sciences, medical devices, bioscience space. So those are the 5 key
What
areas.
size companies are they? Because those seem to be, in general, I deal with some of those, but those seem to be in general a larger companies.
No, they can be startups too. I mean, sometimes there's companies come up with a new technology in one of those spaces. Lots of cybersecurity firms were very early stage, right?
That's true.
Many of our customers in life sciences can be quite early, but then there can be those that have been around a very long time. And even some of the ones that have been around a very long time aren't necessarily huge. Some they're very niche oriented, very specific markets with very specific problems that they solve, and they have a very targeted customer base. And that's very true, for example, in life sciences or in measurement, for example, in measurement devices or things like that.
Sure. So I will open this up here to make sure I'm not going too far from the agenda, but we got kind of 3 highlights that we want to talk about. And one thing you're just mentioning is about high performance organizations on how to focus. And one thing is we always talk about value. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand the word value. They think it's valuable to them. And no one cares about you. You have to care about the other individual and see what's valuable to them. The second area, and we'll touch on, is high performance organizations, how they get aligned, and then how do they get understanding of what is customer centric. And the third is leveraging data. And I know you're a big data person, so we can definitely talk about that in the order that you would like, Laura.
No, we'll just do it in that order. So, because I think it's a logical order that you guys put together. I think that makes sense. And yes, so I come from my roots as in my profession are from the science side, as opposed to maybe the creative side. So don't ask me questions about headlines or or colors or logos. That's really not my area of expertise. But if you want to look at data or get answers to specific questions or have specific questions that require insights from data, you're in my world. So, and that's fun to me. And you mentioned, Troy, that you spent a couple years drafting. We think of ourselves as architects in our firm. So we think of ourselves very much like architects. We're helping our customers architect, create the blueprints for their success, the strategic plan, the messaging, the positioning, how to bring new products to market, how to understand the customer journey, how to create personas, all the things that you might need. And you really brought up an important point about value. So customer centricity is where you have the customer is at the center of every decision that you make. It's how you run your company.
Yeah, right? You would think that most people want to work with, like, quote unquote, the best, right? And in reality, that's not true. They want to work with someone that they feel that they're providing value. And of course, the outcomes have to happen within a certain range. And so I always believe that you have to do your job well, regardless. That's just part of the check, one of the check boxes that you have to do. But you really have to reach out and provide the value in a way that they understand. So when you say customer centric, they're saying, oh, is this valuable? The customer, if I were the customer, it's valuable to me, and this is the reason why. And so, would you want to talk about what is considered valuable to those customers, and how is that communication process work? Maybe an example for that.
Okay, well, first of all, um, in order to know what's valuable to the customer, you need to ask them. A lot of people make
Good
assumptions
point.
about what's valuable to the customer, and we need to ask, what's valuable to you? Why is that valuable to you? Sometimes they tell you something that's valuable, and then you need to kind of do that, what we call 3x5 kind of, 3 by why question. Ask, well, why is that? Why is that? And then
I'm
why
sorry.
is
I'm slow down, Laura. 3 by why?
uh, it's the idea of you asking the why several times,
Oh,
so that you get to the real kernel, right? So someone will say, this is valuable to me, whatever it is. It's valuable to me for X, Y, and Z. And you might say, oh, great. And you might think that's the answer. And you might want to say, well, why is that important to you? And you'll get a little bit more, right? A little richer.
oh yeah. You want to do a deep dive
Yeah, and
to
then they
comprehend.
might say that, and you might say, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Tell me why why that is so important, or why that means so much to you." However, you
Mhm.
might frame it so that you can begin to really understand what's truly valuable to them. Because someone might say, "What's really valuable to me is that someone is responsive," right?
Yeah.
When I make that up.
Yeah.
Or what's really
No,
valuable?
that's a true thing, because
Yes,
a lot of people are left in the dark.
yes,
And say, for example, I had an IT company, and I still do. I have partners for IT companies, but I have to make sure expectations are met. And
yeah,
so I'm very stringent on timelines. And so when someone else misses a timeline, it's not really their fault. It's my fault, because I own the company. And so that information has to be delivered, through the development process, as well as the customer knowing when they could see those timelines, or when they're running their sprints, or those areas where the project or whatever it is that is getting completed. And that's true for every process. I'm onboarding a client right now, and I tell them this takes this long to do it, and these are the steps, and they kind of know what they're getting involved with. So um, there's no major unexpected pain happening.
yeah.
And
You bring up a really good point. Onboarding is really an important step in delivering a valuable in delivering service, right?
mhm,
Managing expectations and onboarding helps make sure we have a good understanding of how we're going to work together. And so that's a critical process to have in an organization. And you want that process to be, as much as possible, customer centric. How does that process going to facilitate taking care of the customer in the way that the customer wants to be taken care of? What will work for them, right? So that's maybe a good example. Onboarding might be something you do, but you want to make sure that it's going to be helpful, useful, for the customer, and that is going to help ensure that they get what they want and they feel good about working with you.
I can tell you, some certain type of people are notoriously bad at that. For example, I used to be. I was a programmer and a developer, and we did these huge projects for Fortune 500 companies, and these gamification projects and stuff. And when information came in, I knew what to do, but to sit down and explain it takes longer. I wasn't very good at that. And so a lot of developers, I'm just using that for example. You give them a task, they know how to functionally do the task, but they don't know why they're doing it, and they don't know the details of this. Is oh, this button works and it does this function,
Yeah.
but without understanding the general purpose of the large picture, you get a lot of disjointness.
Exactly. So, Bentley, thank you for that comment. You're exactly right. Never make the assumption. And let's maybe go back to the next slide in the deck, because I think one of the things that's important about being to the data person is, why do you care about being a high performing organization? And is there any data to support that it's worth the investment? Because being a high performing organization isn't something that you just say, oh, I want to be a high performing organization. We're done. It doesn't work like that.
High five.
Right. It really takes it takes discipline, it takes rigor. And so why would you do it? And a number of years ago, the CMO Council did a study that actually looked at high performing organizations, and comparing those that met certain criteria, they found that those that are high performing did better in terms of sales growth, did better in terms of market share, and did better in terms of profitability in big ways, not small amounts, but double-digit amounts. And so if you want to know if it's going to be worth the time you put in and the energy that you put in, and even the money that you spend in your organization, their research would say yes. And so if you go to the next slide, just so we can kind of
could I ask some questions on the slide here?
Yeah, but 1 second, we'll come back. The
Okay,
reason I want to go to the next slide for just a second is that what is one? People are like, maybe I'm a high performing organization. Am I a high performing organization? How do I know if I'm a high performing organization? So there is actually the High Performing Organization Center, and kind of paraphrasing their definition, I think, because it's kind of written in simple terms. It's really focusing on what matters to an organization to achieve both the financial and non-financial results. And you want them to be exceedingly better than those in your peer group. So it's not just about you doing and getting your results, but better than those in your peer group. So I think those two things really help people think about where they are, right? Because what's important is to know where you think your organization is, so you can understand what your next step might be. Okay, hit me up, Troy. What was your
yeah, sure. So I was looking at the percentages that you had here, right? That we plopped in here. Of course, I understand sales growth, and for smaller, companies under a certain, the percentages can go through the roof. It's not 29%. It could be, 3,000%. It really depends, because if they align certain things and do certain things, they're able to convert, right? As long as they're able to deliver the product. And then profitability is the same thing. You want to add to the bottom line. But my question is really on better market share. I don't know what that means.
Okay, so remember that this is in comparison, right, to others. So a high-performing organization in comparison to organizations that would not be considered high-performing, they are able to have gain more market share, better market share.
What does market share mean for the audience?
Market share means how much of the market does your company have? How much of the market does that could be in dollars?
So for a certain niche industry, there are X amount of organizations. Are you gaining in that market share, in that visibility, and the ability to obtain those?
Yeah, we're all in a market. So whatever market you're in. So if you're a market that's selling, let's say you're in a market selling hotel rooms or space or event space, right? Or whatever it might be, right? You're selling shoes, tennis shoes, running shoes. You're selling to a market. The buyers are people who need your product, and hopefully you're delivering something of value to them that meets their requirements in order for them to buy from you. And if you're a high-performing organization delivering on that customer value, you will have better market share. That will mean you will have more of the customers in that market than your competitors.
And then how they obtain those things is, through not just this optimization, but finding these opportunities for success. For example, I'm making this up, of course, making sure that you're on the top list of the main hotel app, creating those relationships around that in order to be seen above everyone else. Having a good rating system that people engage with, and they want to be at that hotel or event.
I think that's true, but I'm going to ask you to think bigger than that. That's thinking in a downstream marketing fashion, which is execution of things that are at the upstream. And so high performing organizations. So if you go back to those slides for a moment, and we just kind of tee up the next thing about our friend Peter Drucker. So I'm a big fan of Peter Drucker, and he wrote quite a bit. He's pretty much considered the father of modern management. And I truly do believe that this particular statement of his, which is the purpose of business is to create a customer, not sell a product, not sell a company, but to
Mm-hmm.
actually create a customer. And that business, he said, business really only has two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Those are the only two things that produce results. So notice that he's talking about marketing in a very different way. He's
You're
talking
right.
about marketing in a very strategic way. So if you go one step more in the slide,
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm bringing that up is that high performing organizations have a very different kind of marketing organization and function than others. So we have learned, we've been doing research in this space since 2001. And so this work has found that in high performing organizations, the marketing function operates what we call as value creators, marketing with a capital M. And I just put from 2013 to 2021 on this slide, so you could, on this chart, so you could kind of see. So the value creators, that is the group that has been running, at about somewhere between 21 and 30% of all the marketing organizations out there. And if you guys want to read this study, because this last study that we did with the Jindal School of Business at the University of Texas in Dallas, we really looked at the impact or the relationship between performance
Mm-hmm.
and leadership and culture. So if you are interested in that, you can use this link and you can download a copy of it. You have to put some information in, give to get, but you can get a free copy of this report, which was published in the Journal of Applied Marketing Analytics, a peer-reviewed research publication not quite a year ago. So my point being here is that they are the smallest group. And what we've learned is it really doesn't matter what industry or what region of the world or what size budget they have or how many people or anything in the organization. What really, those are not the determining factors. Leadership style and culture are determining factors. And so you might find that to be interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
So that's back to a high performing organization has
Well,
to have
I would imagine the leadership inspires unity, so everyone is on the same page and moving in the same direction, which impacts the performance. Would that be true to say?
I am not going to do a spoiler alert here. Read the study and you'll find out what the combination is, the right combination. And there is a very specific combination. And we didn't make it up because we are a research-based database as a firm. We actually leverage two very well-established frameworks.
Well, you have 8 years of data here, you know.
Well, we actually have more than that. We have data going back all the way to 2001. Sure. I just put these years here just so you could kind of see the trend. And we could spend an entire hour on this. And I know there's some people that joined this group that have today that have seen that and heard about that study for many times. So they're very familiar with it. But what I want to talk about is what these value creators do better and differently, and basically everything. But there's 4 primary things they do better and differently. And I think for any organization that wants to be high performing, we're all looking for the secret. And so I'm trying to give you the secrets.
The silver bullet.
Yeah, I'm talking
about the silver bullet. There's one silver bullet, though. I think it's.
No, there's not. There's actually 4 on that particular slide.
But it's a combination of understanding what specificity works in those particular situations the best.
Actually, I'm going to push back a little bit, and the answer is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your industry. It doesn't matter your size. These 4 things are.
And are these the ones on the sheet right here?
These are the 4 things that the value creators, regardless of their industry, how big they are, how small they are, how much money they have, how many people they have, whatever it is, whether they're B2B or B2C, these are the 4 kinds of things that are particularly different in value creators. First of all, they're very customer centric in the way they approach strategies and growth. They align their activities and investments to very specific quantifiable business outcomes, which I'll define if anyone would like to know. They are extraordinarily good at selecting measures that matter, that are relevant, that resonate, that are often again, very customer centric, and they're really good at performance management. That is using those measures and managing their performance. And then they have a rigorous approach to operational excellence, and that's very process oriented. So those are 4 unique things about this group that they have in common that is different from the other 2 groups, which are the sales enablers, which are folks that see themselves predominantly in service to the sales team and whose measures are all very pipeline oriented, right? Yeah, and then for campaign, the last group, which is a very large group and not a group that often does not score well, is the campaign producers, which is the group that is very focused on what would be considered downstream marketing,
the pipeline,
events, email campaigns, social media campaigns, content, those kinds of things that and the measures associated with that. So hopefully that gives some people something to think about, to challenge themselves with as they're thinking about the second half of 23. Okay, what were you going to say, Troy?
Oh no, I agree what you're saying. The pushback was not really anything negative at all. The pushback you gave was more of just expanding that idea that the foundation of what you're doing, that these are foundational items. They're not necessarily the pipeline. And well, so where people concentrate on pipeline, they could be selling something that may not be a great product. And at the end result, it's going to hurt. So in order to have this great process, this great experience, this great product, you have to have these 4 major bullet points in order to have a vehicle where you can then execute down the pipeline, so to speak.
Exactly. So you're exactly right. The people that are the value creators, they are still obviously concerned about the pipeline, clearly, and or they wouldn't be getting that sales growth.
Yeah, because they're a little close to the vest. That's why.
If they weren't concerned about those things and they weren't good at executing campaigns, they wouldn't have those sales growth, market share, and profitability numbers. What makes them different is that these are the foundations of how they approach what they do, as opposed to just skipping to that. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit about what makes them different, and then maybe that takes us to the next, or the thought about how they translate that into quantifiable business outcomes. So a lot of people, when I say the word outcome, they say, "Oh, that's like a result, right?" Not exactly. Or they'll say it's a goal, right?
That's what I would think.
Right. And I say, no, not exactly.
It's a normal thought. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And it's not exactly, because outcomes are what help you understand what will get you to the result. So a result might be some target of revenue, or maybe, because a lot of people are very revenue oriented, or some target of deals, or whatever it might be. So an outcome is a very well-defined, and that means quantifiable, very customer specific statement that requires 2 or more functions to achieve. So it could be, for example, achieve X number of new opportunities from new customers in our existing market for our XYZ platform by X date, resulting in this much net new revenue, right? Some very specific statement. And that outcome might require marketing, sales, and product and customer service all to work together. And each one of those functions is going to have an objective tied to that outcome. And so if you see this picture here, this is a picture from our software as a service application called Excellence. And it is what helps companies build this direct line of sight between an outcome and an activity. So way down at the bottom where there's an activity, that might be your SEO keyword, activity, or it might be your PPC campaign, or it might be an event, a couple of industry events that you're going to, way down in the activity and tactic level. And so you're thinking that this allows you to get what's in the middle, and it serves sort of as the connective tissue between what you're doing and where you're spending your money and what it is the company is trying to achieve, right? In very clear ways.
Well, Well, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that if you're able to put a flow chart that represents the vision and the steps, it adds all sorts of clarity. So it allows people to have questions they didn't have answered, and allows other people to see that there are questions in this one arena, you know? And so clarity is super important. So again, I think we're going back to that structure, the
Yes.
structure of, and one thing that you brought up that really resonated with me is that, well, maybe we have X amount of followers or customers or whatever the case may be, right? And so I have a network of X amount of links. It's very small, like 25,000 people on LinkedIn, right? And they know me, they see my content, right? Well, no, it's very small compared to other people. I've seen people that have, I got 3 million, 100,000. So it's just like, I do really well, but in comparison to the big boys, it's not really, that much, but it is an audience. And so, if they're already buying from you, already participating for you, understanding that, hey, we got this other thing that we feel that they want, and they've been asking, they want this thing, whatever that thing is, you can say, okay, let us fulfill that and retarget those individuals, because it's much easier to convert a current client to an upsell, or a vertical sell, than get a new customer. I think it's, what's the number? Someone told me it's 10 times harder to get a new customer than to upgrade a current one, or something like that.
I think what I've heard is it costs 5 times as much to get a new customer as it does to keep one. And so, to your point, piggybacking on that, if you had an outcome around growing share of wallet, that is the amount of business that you're doing with an existing customer, and
Okay.
and how you're going to grow that share of wallet. Is it going to be by selling more of what they already buy, or is it by getting them to buy other things that you offer in addition to what they currently buy? And you had that very clearly defined as an outcome, then everybody would know that that's what they're, when they come to go to work the next day, right?
Mhm.
Everything they're doing should be lined up against those outcomes. So they'll be,
Mhm.
right? We all go to work. I want to believe that we all go to work to do a good job and to make a difference. We all want to contribute in some way. I mean,
Well, if you're in a high performance arena, then yes,
okay.
the
And my
answer is
point
yes.
being, if I'm going, my point being that if I know what it is that I need to contribute to, I'm going to be a lot more effective in making decisions about what to do with my day.
Right.
So if it's very clear, the business outcomes are very clear, and I understand what I am expected to do in the function that I am in, then, and I have clear measures of doing that, then I'm going to be a lot happier, because employee retention is a kind of a connected to customer retention. I'm going to be a lot happier employee, because I'm going to know that I'm making a difference in doing things that matter, which kind of goes to that, I think, to the next slide that people might be looking at.
When you say things that matter, you're referring to what matters to the organization and the individual, or both, right?
So you want your whys to be aligned. You want the customer why, the
Go.
company why, and your why, hopefully, to all be in sync. Now, obviously, that may not be all the time, but you want those 3 whys to kind of be synergistic, right? Working together. If people that you have in your organization, high performing organizations, the people that are there, they're aligned with the organization's, hopefully, its mission, and that hopefully the organization's mission is aligned to customer value. So this is when you have a structure. So the example of excellence provides a way to build a plan, whether it's a growth plan or a sales plan or a marketing plan. It's a way to build out a strategic plan. You can have the same structure every single time. And one of the things that a structure like excellence allows people to do is to have this secret weapon, which is mission meaningful measures that form a metrics logic chain. And
I'm so sorry, Laura, say that again slower.
Mission meaningful measures that form a metrics logic chain. Okay, so that little chain that was on the picture, yes. When I'm down, if working in the organization, and I'm responsible. Let's just say I'm a customer success manager, and I somehow am responsible for retaining some number of accounts, or maybe right, getting them renewals for some number of accounts, whatever that might be.
For retention.
Right. I have some activities that are tied to that, and maybe some tactics. I'm kind of down at the bottom of the chain because I'm in that role, and I might work for somebody who is, I'll make this up, the director of customer success. And the director of customer success maybe works for the chief success customer officer, or maybe the chief strategy officer, or maybe the chief growth officer, somebody who then reports to the CEO that has the outcomes that they are then responsible for reporting to who is other stakeholders of the company, whether that's the board or shareholders or whatever that might be. And so they have to form a chain, and all those people's measures need to sync up. And that is one of the secret weapons of high-performing organizations and value creators, is that they have that ability to see that chain. So when I go to work every day, I'm able to say, here's what I am doing today, and it fits here in the chain. And when I do, if I'm successful in what I'm doing, it's going to help the company achieve this, which will help the company achieve this, which will help the company achieve this, which will deliver customer value in this way. Right. So you can see how everything is synced up. That's the very first thing we talked about out of the gate today, alignment. So this is a form of
let's talk about that in a smaller metrics for maybe a solopreneur that has contractors and stuff that's working for them. I'll use my business, for example. So I have a client acquisition mastermind, right? And it is something that's very cost effective. But the purpose is, I have two purposes, well, three. One, to provide value at a very low cost, right? Number two, to provide knowledge and understanding of what's possible, for marketing and communication and all this other stuff. And number three, once they're more mature, their eyes are open. They can either develop their own client acquisition themselves, or they can hire me to build it. And so those systematic steps is a win-win situation for everyone, because a lot of times when on LinkedIn, people have very high value services and they may need your services, but they just don't understand what it is. So they have to have exposure, and they have to have some knowledge and maybe experience of some level of success in that arena. So that's kind of how I look at it. For a more simple process for a very small organizations that don't have a large chain,
But actually, I think you just, in a way, you do have a large chain. And the chain is not about size. You have an outcome that you want to produce for your company. Maybe it's acquire X number of new customers from LinkedIn that are solopreneurs, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's grow what you're doing, or expand the kind of services you're offering to some existing solopreneurs that you have. You have some kind of outcome, and right? You have, as a company, your company, and you have different parts of your company that need to deliver on that outcome. You probably have people that are responsible for, we'll call them hunting. People may be responsible for farming, the people that you're working with. And then you have people, you said contractors, that are probably helping you with the implementation of whatever it is you're trying.
That's the life of a small business.
Exactly. It might be you. It might be you personally, but it's still the same structure. And if you think in that way, then you'll be able to improve your effectiveness and your efficiencies, which kind of takes us to the notion of operational excellence, right? And to data, so that you are using the data that you have. How do you know which LinkedIn people that you want to retain and grow? You need some data to help you with that. How do you know which LinkedIn solopreneurs you want to pursue? Well, some data would help you do that. What is your processes that you have in place to help you do those things? So the people that are in your ecosystem, maybe those are partners, maybe those are contractors, are coming in and understand what the process is, so you can be more efficient and effective in doing that, instead of having to.
And also sometimes things that work well now may not work well 3 or 6 months from now.
Exactly.
You got to understand when the right time is to execute certain things. So everything has expiration date. Things that don't have expiration dates are that word value. How do I provide core value to people? And these other ways of doing it are just instruments of executing it. But someone like right now, if I send a welcome video through my mobile app right here, I get a high percentage conversion to a vetted book meeting, right? Well, there was a time when a simple DM would do that, and it's not that way anymore. So understanding the world that you're living in and what is perceived as value versus annoyance is a big need and a big ask when you're developing these processes.
So Troy, you said something really important, and I don't want to skip past it. The way you knew that is through data. You had data that told you that a VM was doing really well, and you saw it trail off. Maybe you thought you didn't realize that was data, but it was data that gave you insight.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. No.
And then when you started trying this other way, you saw it pick up, and that was data doing that. So you actually, if you're articulating it through the framework we're talking about, the lens we're talking about, you actually were using data, and you said, it expired. The world changed in 3 to 6 months from now. That expired, but it was data that gave you insight that said that's no longer effective.
Yeah.
So we need to change what we're doing because the
data A/B testing, understanding, knowing what a long trend or a short trend is, capitalizing on that, and I always separate execution from value. A customer, that what I help them convert as well, and maybe slightly different audience. And I say, well, in order to take this customer on, I need to know that they provide value. That's a huge thing. Most of them don't. Most of them want to sell my stuff. You know what I mean? And so if you're not providing value from that perspective of the prospect or the audience, it's kind of down. It's kind of you're kind of going to go down the drain. So you have to build these processes. You can build all these great processes, but if no one likes you, they're not going to talk to you. If they feel that you're not authentic, they feel like you're not providing a level of reducing someone's pain, they're not going to do that. So those vehicles for customer-centric during our conversations are very important. What is important for them? What's their pain? And then how can we lessen that pain? Even if we're not going to make money. So if I have a meeting and someone says, I got a LinkedIn issue, and it's not a sales call. It's just like, I got an issue and I want to see if you can solve it. And I said, oh yeah, well, I said, honestly, you're thinking two-dimensionally. You're trying to do a direct message campaign and you only get so much conversion. And I say, think about creating an omni-channel, and just for everyone else, omni-channel means reach out to them in more than one way over a course of time. And then you'll understand where that individual lives. They may live on LinkedIn. They may live on the post. They may live on email. They maybe email people. And people always forget that, email? Yes, email. Email is still the backbone of businesses. And if you're not thinking on a way as how do I provide value on all those channels and how do I tie it together, you end up having a hard time, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Okay, so I know we only have a little bit of time left. Is there some questions that people might have? So yes, we have a book called Fast Track Your Business. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or other places that are listed on our website. We have some reviews, and that in it we talk about the circle of traction, which is how to basically build and be more customer centric in your approach so that you can accelerate your growth. So that might be a way to get started, a way to learn a little bit more. And to your point, I'm always happy to have a conversation. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email or schedule a call, and happy to talk with you if you've got a question. But maybe you have a question now. So Troy, what should we do about getting some people to end their questions?
Well, yeah, if you have a question, we'll stay on for another 5 more minutes. Feel free to add it on the chat. Meanwhile, Lisa, what I would like you to do is go ahead and add Laura's LinkedIn address on there, and also the link to schedule a call for her. And she'll, you know what you could do, Laura, probably after this is add the link to the book in the chat so they can see that as well.
Okay.
That way they can contact you. And we can't do it through this system here.
Okay,
But
hold on.
yeah. Another thing too is if you want to get and talk to me about LinkedIn or strategies around that, feel free to reach out to me. My booking link is actually on my profile. Pick the 20-minute option. I'm always open for a conversation to help. I do not have sales calls unless it's a sales call. And a 20-minute call is just a conversation. So I always like to see if I can get to know you and maybe provide some insight on how to solve or lessen a particular pain. So feel free to go ahead and schedule a call. And one last thing is, if you are trying to learn systems, reach out to me as well. This whole show is sponsored by the Client Acquisition Mastermind. And so I'm already filled at 6 or 7 seats of it, but I'm looking for a good group of people that want to get together and learn how to build these systems together. And so we have a course, and then we also have an open hours. I charge quite a bit for my hourly rate. So this is kind of a really great opportunity just to pick my brain and just to fix stuff that need to happen. If you're interested in that, just book some time with me and I'll have a chat with you. And it's super cheap. Laura, I know that you sent the link there. You sent it on the private chat. So what happens is Studio Stream, we're using Restream, and it doesn't allow us to text back on the chat. So we'll go back on there. And so I'm going to save this link and then I'll jump on the chat and add it for you.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me put anything in to regular chat.
Oh, yeah. It's just not built that way, unfortunately, when you're doing these streaming services. But I do appreciate everything that you have explained to us. And you are very articulate, and I appreciate that, because there is a chain of command. And as long as those things are aligned, people can move very quickly to meet some of their goals for success. And that's, at the end of the day, I was in the corporate world, and I am not suited so much for that. To be honest with you, I'm a doer. And so some of those things are red tape, like just too much red tape for me. And when I was a project manager for Cricut, which is a great company, by the way, I was one of the first PMs they hired, as far as I knew at the time. And they gave me 37 projects to manage. And I had 5 people I had to report to. And one had to do a PowerPoint, one was an email, one was a spreadsheet. And person 1 couldn't know what person 4 knew. And they, don't tell him this kind of stuff. All he's interested in is this information. And so the corporate world is designed for very special people. And I'm not one of them, because of the intricacies that have to be involved. And I think at the time, I was very straightforward, and I was more of a doer. And so you have opened the light to why those structures are in place. So I appreciate that. And I don't have anything else to talk about. So I'm a little bit long-winded, but I do appreciate the conversation, Laura, and I thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoy watching and the events that you have put on. So I really feel honored to be among them. So thank you for that. And thank you, Lisa, for all of your help with preparing for today.
Awesome.
Yes, and everyone who came today, really appreciate your time, and I hope everyone took away at least one, actionable idea or something that they can chew on that might help them improve or expand their high performance capabilities.
And I know I said this before, but for the people who registered, we'll shoot them a DM just for the replay and the link to the post that we sent right before. So thank you, everyone. I do appreciate it.
Take care. I'll have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.
You as well.